James Sprague is not the fittest man on earth. And some other observations from the 2024 Rogue Invitational.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
All right, before that, I want to go over 3 positives and 3 negatives that I saw in summarizing the Rogue Invitational this year. Positive number 1 is the 2024 Rogue Invitational. Everything about it. They had a free stream and they had a paid stream if you wanted to get an alternative commentary and various different interactive camera angles. The free stream was totally fine for me, and they mostly got it right. For nitpicking a little bit, they missed some things. For instance, how do you miss Justin Medeiros sneaking across the finish line while you're focused on 2 other people?
Jay Crouch is going to just edge out James Sprague for the event win. Sprague is going to take second. But did Justin Medeiros get in? Justin Medeiros did get in. Justin Medeiros is going to win the event. We absolutely did not see that.
So a couple bad angles. In addition to that, the post-game interviews, to put it nicely, were underwhelming. Now, I understand that it's difficult to think quickly on your feet and come up with good questions, but some of them just were really cringe.
What does it take to become Tia Claire Toomey? Ooh.
Now, she was interviewing some of the same people over and over, like Tia 5 times, Laura 4 times. So I understand in those situations that it might get a bit difficult, but it wasn't great. The venue looked amazing. The crowds looked amazing. Now, I wasn't there, but from what I hear from the stream, what I see and hear from the people that I know who were there, the environment was electric. It's what Texas should have been. So they're probably going to stay there. They're already talking about re-upping for another year in Scotland. Bye-bye USA. Hello, Scotland. The programming was really solid, in my opinion. Now, understand I'm not an OG in the game and I'm not a programmer. However, from a pure fan and your average CrossFitter perspective, it's very exciting to watch. Seemed to skew a little bit heavy, but probably better than the CrossFit Games. So that's your first winner. Second winner is going to be Europe, the UK, Scotland. It's what the United States should have been. It's what Texas should have been. But for some reason, we just can't seem to fill a stadium. While you got Brazil filling stadiums, you got Europe filling stadiums, Australia filling stadiums. They took it to Scotland, sold out, and it was an electric environment. And that's just something that they weren't able to do in the United States. And it's consistent across the board for semifinals and other events as well. So big winner for this is Europe. They want more events. And after this, the only thing keeping HQ having the CrossFit Games in the States and not taking it over to Europe, quite frankly, is the fact that they seem to be incompetent sometimes. Number 3, athlete notables. Positives. On the women's side, you've got the Tuminator, you've got Gabby, and you've got Laura. Those 3 look like the 3 women to beat on the women's side. Now, I want to bring up Ariel as well. She looked really good. Really, really good. I wasn't sure how she'd perform, this being the first individual event back since the CrossFit Games, which really had her broken up. But man, did she show up. So super excited about that. Gazan started off really slow, but ended up finishing in 5th, which is awesome. But going forward, it still looks like there's nobody out there who could beat the Tuminator. Tia Claire Toomey is the fittest woman, fittest human to ever live. And until she retires, she's going to probably keep winning. Before we get to the men's side, I'm going to pair Guy and Danny Spiegel together as one, because they're sort of like the same person in some respects. These are the 2 people who can hit home runs. They've got all the talent in the world. They're fun to watch, and then they just leave you scratching your head sometimes. With Danny, it seems like maybe she's not all that interested in winning. She can have a great living and do whatever the heck she wants while taking 7th, 10th, 13th. And that's okay. I'm sure she still works hard, but I was still impressed by her performance here. And then Guy, of course, he's kind of doesn't have that killer instinct when you watch him in interviews. He looked really solid across the board here. Outside of event 1, he was exciting and he killed it. He did great. I'm really looking forward now to seeing what he's going to do going forward. On the men's side, Adler, Brett, Ricky, Dallin, Hopper. Really no surprise there, right? Fikowski went out with a bang, putting the exclamation point on his career. Adler has proved himself to be the second fittest man alive, although there might be somebody out there who disagrees. Now, Dallin and Hopper, of course, are really fun to watch. The banter back and forth, the friendship and the competitive rivalry. Sky's the limit for those guys. I really look forward to seeing them in future CrossFit Games and other big events like this. And then Ricky's just kind of always there. Starting to wonder a little bit if he can really step it up in order to take that number 1 spot. But no matter what, he seems to always be in the mix, and he's a really well-rounded athlete that absolutely could win the CrossFit Games at some point in the future. Jay Crouch looked really good, maybe surprising to some people, and Jorge Fernandez, who got in barely in the qualifier, he looked good as well. Came in 13th out of 19th, but looked a lot better than some people probably expected. On to the negatives. Number 1, North America, the United States, Texas. This was a huge loss for the United States. CrossFit is apparently fun to watch for people in other countries, and they go to it in droves. They're filling up stadiums, and when we take it back to Carson, California, crickets. So one of the biggest losses that I see here is such an awesome, well-run, and notable event doing so well in Scotland when it wasn't able to do the same thing in Texas. It's another reason why we may end up losing the CrossFit Games at some point, if the CrossFit Games continues. Which brings me to number 2, the CrossFit Games, CrossFit HQ, Don Fowl. Why did it look so easy to pull off such a great event? Sure, it wasn't perfect. I brought up some negatives earlier, and there were other things as well. But the programming was good. It was exciting. It seemed like the right people placed in the right places. And yeah, I know that things got all thrown off at the games, but we know what the events were going to be. And it wasn't as good and it wasn't as balanced as Rogue. Even if you say that Rogue skewed a little bit heavy, which I would argue that it really didn't, and there wasn't even a max lift there, it was better programmed than the games. It was more balanced. And if it was more balanced and you had James Sprague in the field, does that mean that who won the Rogue Invitational just 3 months after the games is actually the fittest man on earth? Of course not. That would be Andrew Hiller's argument, but I'll get that in a second. Number 3, rebounding. Box jump rebounding, or gigantic 5-foot circular thing jump rebounding. It's probably not going to happen anymore. You can argue about whether or not it ever should have been programmed, or whether something went wrong in the planning or the testing here, but we're probably just not going to see it anymore. And if we're being honest, we probably shouldn't. Even if in theory, these are athletes at the highest level, and we should be able to have them do this movement and make their own choice and all those different things. We're just probably not going to see it because the juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's not worth the bad publicity at this point. And now that I think about it, I'm going to throw in a 4th. Clocks. The clocks. I don't know what happened there, but for 2 events in a row, we had way too many people not come in under the cap. That's something you really don't see and really shouldn't see. It's like when you're at your local affiliate and everybody's missing the cap, including the best people in class. It's not something that should happen. It usually indicates a problem with the programming. Now, some people have mentioned that they had to fit into these events into tight windows because of the strong man and strong woman going on, but I can't imagine that 1 or 2 minutes would have made that big of a difference. So you really got to wonder who was testing these and what kind of planning went into it. I think that was a clear error in the planning of this event, in the programming. And now the final point, that James Sprague is not the fittest man alive. That's what Andrew Hiller would say, right? Well, he's right. Not right now at this moment, at least, because he just had pneumonia last week. And I know from having had pneumonia 5 to 10 times and having bronchitis and asthma problems that you don't just recover a week after pneumonia. Now, if you ask James, he'd say he was totally fine. He was healthy. He might not even realize it, but there's no way he was at 100%. Now, I don't think that means that we just throw out his performance and say it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that at all. There are still clear holes in his game. But pneumonia is going to affect your lungs a week later. And even if it didn't, being out of the gym for a week and a half, whatever, at that level is going to make a difference. James looked good on the heavy stuff. Decent, at least. He was able to move through it. The stuff that really hurt him was the classical handstand push-ups. I would argue new objects. We saw him struggle on the log muscle-ups. We saw him struggle on the horizontal pegboard. And then we saw his grip and or midline potentially have issues on that same pegboard. So there are holes in his game that I think we can see, but 11th isn't that bad. He beat a lot of good people. And here's the thing. The test was in August. That's the one that everybody trains for. You ramp up your training. You make sure that you come in the best shape because you're trying to be the fittest man alive. And then you do the test that's in front of you. James Sprague did the test that was in front of him that everybody else did. I don't care if you call it the cardio games. Maybe you should have worked on more cardio then. And he won. You need to be prepared for that. It's never going to be perfect. Sometimes it's going to be lighter. Sometimes it's going to be heavier. Sprague won at his best and at everybody else's best. I don't care if Adler dropped out. That means he wasn't a part of the conversation. Tia wasn't the fittest woman alive when Laura won. What was the reason? She was pregnant, but she wasn't the fittest alive, which of course is understandable while you're pregnant. Laura was. And this year, James Sprague was the fittest person alive. At this event, he was not the fittest man for this test, which is not the test. James Sprague is still the fittest man alive, and he will be until next year's CrossFit Games if he gives up his spot. Should come. I've never really been good at goodbyes, so I don't really know how to close this out. Maybe I'll do that thing that Hiller does. They say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. He does the movie clips, and they usually make a point for him.
I'm not great at farewell, so that'll do, pig.
That's the worst goodbye I've ever heard. And you stole it from a movie.